Hello, my name is John Nalbandian, and I'm a retired faculty member at the University of Kansas. I taught for years in the School of Public Affairs and Administration, where we specialize in educating students for careers in local government. So I'm going to talk to you today about some of the foundational concepts in making difficult decisions. I'm talking about political values, the values that conflict and make policy making so difficult. I'm going to do this from an academic perspective, but that perspective is informed by the 8 years I spent on the Lawrence City Council, including 2 years as the council's mayor. So, as I said, behind embedded in difficult policy decisions, I call them political decisions, are questions of values. Now, these are not personal values like love, honesty, and so on, loyalty, and so on and so forth. These are these are fundamental democratic values, and there are four of them. And I didn't pick these out of a hat. They're pretty much agreed upon in theoretical circles. So the first is the value of representation. That council members are representatives, and there are constituencies, and you are expected to respond to the will of the people. Second, in addition to that value of representation, I add the notion of engagement and participation. The second value is the value of efficiency, and you're familiar with that one. And I add to that the notion of professionalism, so efficiency slash professionalism, because I want to convey there and sort of recognize the respect that we have for rational analytical thinking, maybe that goes into master plans and so on and so forth. The third value is value of social equity, an understanding of trying to treat all groups as they wish. And the fourth is the value of individual rights, and that may be property rights we could be talking about. It could be civil rights. So I'm going to make some observations about these values, but first I want to talk to you a little bit about a hypothetical case study, and embedded in the case are the values. So let's say that a local government is just completed a new or an update of its Parks and Recreation master plan. Included in the plan is a recreation facility, a new recreation facility that really will be kind of state of the art. And it's a popular piece in the master plan, but of course they're going to need to find a way to fund it. And what they've decided is that they're going to try to fund it with going to a public vote to authorize the issuance of bonds so that they can pay for the facility. The council's on board with this, and they want to proceed with the public vote. But they run into a problem. And they thought there was pretty popular, and it is pretty popular idea. But apparently in the past, there's been some difficulties with the wording of a previous bond issue, which was explicit about what the purpose of the money would be used for, but also had that sort of default clause or other expenditures as needed, or however that you all are familiar with that catch-all that goes with the bond issue. So pretty standard procedure here, except what happens is a group of citizens come to the council recalling that in the past there has been a bond issue or two, I'm not sure what that would be, but where the explicit purpose of the fund, it was of the money, was expended for what it said, but then that clause and other expenditures as needed was also invoked. And that was invoked for expenditures that were not related to the primary purpose of the bond issues. And people feel like they were taken advantage of, that it was a way of getting money for something that the council wanted to have done, but didn't know how popular that would be. So the word is that what looked like a pretty popular this bond issue was going to be passed pretty easily now becomes contentious, and there's a question of whether or not it's going to pass. So one of the council members says at a meeting, "I've got an idea. What if we are very explicit about the purpose of the bond issue, and we also distinguish between capital costs and operating costs? So we say the money for the bond issue, the money that is authorized, will be used for capital expenses and only for the capital expenses, and the operating expenses will be paid for by user fees." Now, I know that those of you who know Parks and Rec know that that's not feasible, but nevertheless, just go with me on this one, okay? So the council adopts the pledge, and the vote is passed, but it's passed very narrowly. And the pledge, the passage of the bond issue is attributed to the pledge that the council takes. Now, the interesting thing is that originally the council had asked staff for a schedule of user fees, and it seemed pretty reasonable that they could do that. But now, as they're starting to build the project, they run into some problems with the construction itself. The problems are not going to affect the capital costs, but they are going to affect the operating costs. That means the user fee is going to have to be adjusted upward. So council asked staff for new user fee, and the user fee is increased from what it was, and not just by a trivial amount. But what's the council going to do? I mean, they made this pledge, and so they're kind of stuck with what they have if they're going to be true to their word. But they decide in order to promote the transparency that what they will do is they will adopt the user fee schedule, at least the initial user fee schedule, at one of their public business meetings. So it comes onto the agenda, and they're ready to make a motion to approve the upgraded user fees, but then there's public comment. In the audience are 20 pastors from local churches. One by one, they get up and they tell the council, if you adopt this new user fee schedule, you are going to systematically deprive a substantial portion of the underprivileged in this community an opportunity to use this facility. It's just not fair. Okay. You're the council. What are you going to do? Are you going to live up to your pledge, or are you going to respond to the equity concerns that's been raised? Well, I know what you're going to do. You're going to do politics, okay? Now, what that means to me is you're probably going to play with the different values that are at stake here, trying to find a way to satisfy both the pledge but also to accommodate the equity concern. So let's look at the values now in light of the case. The representation value is reflected in the pledge itself, but it's also reflected in the idea that the pastors are representing a group of people as well. So what we see in the value of representation is that within the value itself, there can be conflict, okay? The second value is the value of efficiency, and this is the rational analytical work that's gone into the cost estimates and the user fees and so on and so on and so forth. The third value is the value of equity, and we see that expressed in the pastor's argument. But what's interesting about the pastor's argument is what they do is they are not only talking about an equity concern, but they are asking the council, aren't you representatives of the total community? So what they've done is they've built an argument around both representation and equity. And then the fourth piece is the individual rights. And that, like I said, property rights might be involved in the case, contracts as well. But rights are so fundamental in our society and so powerful that we invent them. And so it may very well be that one or more of the pastors say, don't our citizens have a right to attend and utilize this recreation facility since it's paid for by its taxes? Okay, what on earth are you going to do? All right, here's some observations about the values. And let me go to my notes to make sure I get them right. First, you cannot have all the values optimally at the same time. It does not work that way. And let me give you an example. Do you believe in majority rule? Okay, I know you're reluctant to tell me that you believe in majority rule, but I know you do because you make so many decisions by majority rule. All right, majority rule representation, okay? Now, do you believe in individual rights? Yeah, you believe in individual rights. Okay, now, who are individual rights protecting you from? Yeah, majorities. So, what's the balance? What's the appropriate? Is there a correct answer for the balance between individual rights and majority rule? Well, if there were, we wouldn't need legislative bodies and rule-making agencies and courts to adjudicate the various laws that are passed. Second, you cannot ignore any value over a long period of time and not expect trouble. Now, this is particularly evident and easy to understand when it comes to the value of efficiency, but it's also true for the other values as well. Third, efficiency may be, especially like for staff, efficiency, analytical thinking may be your favorite value, but if we're talking about politics and if we're talking about community building, you got to remember, if you're going to understand politics, remember, efficiency is one of four of our legitimate values. If community building is the goal, negotiation and compromise is the character of politics, okay? Us and them has no place in community building. And let me, it struck me, I was thinking about this, and it struck me that at the national level and at the state level, you do not see national reps or state representatives talking about the state or the nation as a community. That term is only used at the local level. So to the extent that local politicians take their model of politics from national or state partisan levels, they're going to be off base. That is not what community building is about. So at its core, politics is about these four values. And the last point I want to make about the values is when you are given alternatives for, either we can do A or we can do B, and it involves controversy, it's very common for you to get down into the weeds to try to understand the technical part of the alternatives themselves, but that's not what politics is about. Politics is about the consequences of the choices that are being made. And what a council does when it votes on a controversial issue where there might be alternatives is to say, these consequences are more in line with our community and where we want our community to be than this set of consequences. Thank you all very much.